Bev, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be back, and I'm eager to see where this conversation goes today.
I know, me too. Well, we're going to talk about the commitment to a new identity, because as people recover from trauma and addiction, we do have to sort of think of ourselves in a new way. And we're going to go over the 4 pillars, levels.
Yes.
The 4 things,
Yeah.
4 things: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual.
That's it. You got them.
Damn.
Well done.
It's almost like I did my homework.
Good
Today,
job.
this time. Anyway, in a new way. And we're going to go over the 4 pillars, levels.
Yes.
The 4 things,
Yeah.
4 things: mental, emotional, physical, spiritual.
That's it. You got them.
Damn.
Well done.
It's almost like I did my homework.
Good
Today,
job.
this time. Oh, you know what? I just realized I have to put on my headphones. Hold, please.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's going to give me feedback. Nate's going to have fun editing this one. And I'm back.
There you are.
I just realized I had to change my headphones. Anyway, I am so excited to be talking about this because when you and I spoke the first time, we got off the podcast and I was like, oh my God, that was one of my favorite podcasts ever. Because you have your superpowers, you're able to like break things down. It's like, how do you think of it in terms of like thinking or thoughts or beliefs?
I always say it's application for me. So I'm able to take a concept and hear it and then break it down or think it through in terms of how might I apply this to my life so that I can get some results from it. But not just that. Then I always take it to the next level of embodiment. And so I believe that's going to all come through as we talk about how you actually form a new identity for yourself, because I think these are part of the elements of doing it as application and embodiment and practice and living the paradigms or principles or practices that you buy into that work for you.
Yeah, that's really good. Application is so important. I mean, so what I've noticed, I'm a self-proclaimed self-help junkie, right? Like I love gaining new information. I hear it, it makes sense. I get inspired and I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. And then it's almost as if that was what I needed, just like that momentary, oh, I feel so much better. But actually applying it, that's the tricky part. And it always seems to come in the places where I don't want to change. For instance, setting boundaries for me was especially hard, like speaking my truth without blame or judgment. And then, asking for what I need, like maybe stating a hardship, asking for what I need. Like that's kind of how I think of setting boundaries. Man, it's so hard to speak your truth to somebody if you're afraid that they're going to be mad at you or reject you in some way. And so that is the actual applying it. So that's where it was always hard for me.
Yeah, for me, it's applying it and almost pairing it with what I want to be experiencing. So what I've done in my business, in my recovery, in my marriage, in all of these different areas that I participate in, I have paired it with self-actualization, because in my recovery, self-actualizing was essentially what I was committed to. I was committed to using my recovery, my healing for spiritual growth. And that I valued that so much that now I just pair that with everything that I do. Even in my business, I see my business as an opportunity to spiritually grow and self-actualize. So what it does for me is it makes me want to stretch myself, like go bigger, take the risk, because I'm not viewing those things from the human self or the humanness. I'm viewing it more from, this is going to help me grow and evolve spiritually. This is going to help me actualize. And because I value that so much, it makes it easier for me to want to do those things, because when I do them, I don't look for the fear, for the rejection, I look for, this is going to help me grow, that I'm going to learn something new and cool. I'm going to stretch myself further than I thought I was capable of. How awesome is that? Like, my perspective now, as someone who's been in recovery for a long time, I'm always looking at through that like growth mindset lens versus the fear, the mistakes, the failure. I just don't see it that way anymore. Like, I don't choose that perspective when I'm applying things. I choose the perspective of, how is this going to help me self-actualize even more?
That's really brilliant. You're talking about perspective and focus. Can we define the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset? I believe Carol Dweck started.
Yeah, she did. So yeah, I don't have the definition.
Oh.
I'm so not like a definition person. Like, I'm more like the essence, the experience.
I mean, listen, you kind of just, maybe you just kind of said it. I just wanted to call it out because when I first got sober, I was sort of stuck in this thinking that this is how I am. I'm not like, and it was when I first got sober, the feeling was broken. I feel broken. Yeah. And the fear was that I would never be this, that I would never be different. I was always trying to be different, but I was having a problem actually applying the information I was receiving. Right. So I was attempting, but I kept falling back to this idea that this is just how I am. And that is really a fixed mindset. And Carol Dweck is this, I think she was a psychologist at Stanford, but she wrote a book about mindset. And she talks about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And that's like, a fixed mindset is I'm bad at math, and a growth mindset is I can take a class and learn some things and then get better at it, type of thing. That's it. And so we can apply that to sobriety as well, right? Like thinking I'm always going to be this way, or that fear. And listen, I kind of solved the drinking problem a long time ago, but girl, look, can we talk about nutrition and diet for a second? That seems to be, so even though I've been sober for a while, I'm sort of in the throes of that, addictive, I'm just going to eat the cookies today and maybe tomorrow, I'm not sure, but yeah.
I always say the physical level is the hardest level.
Is it really?
For me, it's been the case too. So it's kind of funny because you and I both have been in long-term recovery. And so what I always, when we talk about the 4 levels, which you already mentioned, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical, what's interesting about those 4 levels is, like, for me, I had to come in on the mental and emotional level. Why? Because I was having a breakdown there. I was really breaking down on those levels, like almost to the point where I couldn't function at work anymore. And work had been that one area where I was always telling myself, I'm high functioning because I do well at work.
What kind of work were you doing at the time?
I was doing domestic violence work. So I was a program manager. Right. I know. We talked about this too.
We did. So for those, for those that don't know, Beverly, I'm going to do an intro after, I always do the intro after we record, just in case, to give the overview. But I'm going to recommend that people listen to your first episode. You do go into your story, your recovery story, and yours is not actually, it's becoming more and more common that people get sober through non-traditional ways. You didn't do 12 steps and you were able to heal your trauma. I love your book. Oh my God, Transcending Trauma.
Yep.
Yeah, I just there it is. I actually just posted, in anticipation of our interview today, I did post it on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah. I tried to
appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. But so anyway, so you had some issues, you did get sober, you did heal your trauma, and now you're passing along all the tools and information that you learned during your journey. And so yeah, go back and listen to that one. But you're right. What's interesting about the physical, I was listening to this conversation with Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a neurobiologist at Stanford, and he was talking about, he made this comment, and I had never thought of it this way before. We think of our brains and our body as different or separate in some way. But the truth of the matter is, he goes, if you took away your skeletal structure, your organs, your bones, your muscles, all that would be left would be the silhouette of nervous tissue. So while your brain is in your cranial cavity, like your nervous tissue, your brain tissue innervates every square inch of your body. And I've often thought, like, oh, I wonder if that's like the missing piece in my sobriety is the physical, because you're like, the issues are in your tissues, your body
Yeah.
remembers. So what is your thought? What are your thoughts on, that somatic part of the healing, the physical part?
Well, I think, when you think about trauma survivors, and I can only speak to my experience. So when I'm speaking about this, I don't speak for all trauma survivors. I
Sure.
just
Yeah.
speak for me. But that's why the body was the hardest, because it's like, for me, I got some dominion over the mental and the emotional levels, and I was feeling stronger within myself. Then the spiritual level came in, and I was feeling stronger and more confident. But the one area that felt always so out of control was the body. One, because I actually was diagnosed when I was 16 with a movement disorder. So I tend to shake anyway. Then going through a recovery process from trauma and substances and mental health, a lot of people report feeling very shaky, feeling inwardly very shaky. So just a lot of body sensations, a lot of like physiological things happening that maybe the mind doesn't understand is going on. So there's just, there's so many things that have to get worked through. Even, just the body kind of healing itself again, and how long that takes to do. So, the body for me has been this continuous process of working on myself. I do continue to work on the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. But I found with the physical, it's like there's just been these periods of going a bit more intense on it. Like there was like a 3-year period that I did yoga like 5 times a week. And that was one way that I moved the energy through my body. There was a couple years that I did Reiki and cranial sacral work, where it was just more focused on the energy and the body sensations and kind of moving the energy in that sort of way. I did reflexology. I've done some massage. Massage was always really difficult for me at the beginning. I didn't even like, it was hard to have my body be touched by somebody else. And so I've had to really go through these different phases of being able to work on my body and have more of a connection with my body and not dissociate from my body. And so I just feel like it's a lifelong journey with all of the levels, but in particular, being a trauma survivor, the body has been one that's taken a bit longer, I think.
For the sake of this conversation, I'm sure people are going to go back and listen to the other one. What types of trauma, you can share in a general way or as specifically as you want to, but what kinds of trauma did you experience that you're healing from?
So, growing up in a domestic violence situation with my mom and dad was probably the biggest trauma. Then there were some sexual traumas that happened when I was younger as well.
Childhood or like post-teen?
Childhood and post-teen. Yeah. As a young adult.
Okay.
So just living in an environment where it's unsafe, it's like, even if you think of your body as like your home or your temple, like I literally lived in a home that externally was not safe, and then never got to resource myself in a way of like, I'm safe inside of myself, because I was a child. So I didn't have the languaging or the tools to understand how to do that. So it just created shakiness for me in my life. So it's kind of interesting that I then got diagnosed with a movement disorder, because externally it was very shaky in the foundation of the home and the family. Yeah, what's coming up for you?
Yeah. I was like, I know those who aren't watching this on YouTube, like, questions. I have so many questions. I get a little bit of criticism for interrupting people, but I just can't help myself. I have questions. Okay, so yeah, not feeling safe in the body. And okay, what was coming up for me when you're like, oh, you have a movement disorder? My thinking is always, what are the listeners thinking? And it's okay if you don't have a movement disorder, the thing is that because you've had to find lots of tools, right? And these tools that we can then sort of extrapolate by saying, oh, well, if you use them and it helped you, then even if you didn't have like a movement disorder, you can still use these same tools. It should actually, I don't know if easier is a fair statement,
Right.
but we might be closer to like a more peaceful feeling at the end of utilizing the tools. So just because you don't have a movement disorder, I don't want you to start thinking that the stuff doesn't apply. I have heard so many people talk about yoga as a healing, like a somatic healing tool. Reiki I've done myself. Reiki is, if you've never had Reiki done, it's like I laid on a table and there were two practitioners. One held their hand, sort of hovered over my head, another one hovered over my body, and they were like moving my energy. And I was like, all right, this is a little weird, a little woo-woo. And at the end of it, she sat me up and she handed me a glass of water and she said, "Did you drive here?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? Of course I drove myself." Like, I didn't just like slam a pint of tequila or something. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "I'm going to have you sit in this room for a little while." And I stood up and I was like, "Woo." I was like, "Whoa, what is happening?" And I sat in this little waiting room and I felt like I was high. So of course I went back then the very next week. I was like, "Can we do that again?" Yeah, not the same experience.
It's blissful. It's definitely blissful.
Yeah. And I didn't have the same experience the second time, but maybe because my energy had been so blocked that when it started moving again, it was a really trippy experience. Can you describe what cranial sacral work is about?
Yeah. Again, I don't have definitions for you, but it's like kind of a cross for me. This is just my layman's way of explaining it.
What was your experience?
Like a cross between Reiki and massage. So it's a bit more hands-on, like what you're talking about with Reiki is usually it's hands off of the body.
No touching.
Right. But with the craniosacral, it is. And so just working a lot around the head for sure for me, and then other parts of the body. So again, it's just, where in the body do we store stories or narratives? Are there particular stories or narratives around certain body parts? I mean, I think we do this all the time when we look at ourselves in the mirror and we judge ourselves, or we, judge our bodies in this sort of a way. So we're constantly creating stories about our bodies. And so I think some of the body work can be really helpful to form a connection with your body, and then to form like a relationship with your body where you're actually, serving your body by doing physical exercise, by being compassionate to it, by sending it love. So I have a very, specific practice that I do in the mornings, usually with my dogs. It's almost like I do Reiki with the dogs, but more so because when I'm with the dogs, like there's such an unconditional love that I feel with them, that I'm able to tap into that energy very easily. And so what I do is I just tap into that universal loving energy, unconditional loving energy, and then I send it to my body. Like I send it through my body, I send it to different parts of my body. And this has been a way that I have formulated more love for myself, first and foremost, but also for my body and what my body does for me.
Yeah, I think that's so important. The whole idea about speaking to ourselves kindly, especially about our bodies. I think for women, it's in our society, we're conditioned to believe that our value is based on what we look like. And if I don't like what I see in the mirror, I think that is tied to my identity. Right. So even though I tried to be kind, practice radical acceptance, like the whole Tara Brach radical. Have you ever read that book? Oh my God, I love that. And she has that rain meditation on YouTube. It's so healing. That's a good way for me to like process negative feelings. But I haven't really spent much time being mindful about tapping into that feeling. And then once I feel the feeling, to send it to my body. I think that's a great, I'm totally going to try that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's true, these stories that we tell ourselves, like, I don't think we realize, I never realized how much I was like making up stories about what things mean until I got sober. And then I realized, oh, what are these thoughts that I'm thinking about myself, my body? And, it wasn't until I got sober and started doing journaling and writing and meditation that I became aware of these stories. So how do you have a process? I know you don't really do 12 steps. Did you have a process that you started with to maybe identify and uncover some of those negative limiting beliefs?
Yeah, I mean, through the process of spiritual psychology, which is the way that I did my recovery, and it's still what I use. But there was in spiritual psychology, we call it unfinished business, unresolved issues, misunderstandings.
Oh,
And
misunderstandings is
so then
great.
it becomes anything that disturbs your peace is an unresolved issue. So anything that disturbs your peace becomes an unresolved issue. So that is your kind of indicator for anybody listening. You just go to, what are the things that disturb my peace? Is it looking in the mirror and looking at my body that disturbs my peace? Is it my relationship with my partner that disturbs my peace? Is it my work? So it helps you get dominion over what's going on in your consciousness. It helps you start to know what are the thoughts that are going on in my consciousness. And to me, this is the ultimate recovery. It's resolving your unresolved issues. Like, people want to know how to thrive. People want to know how to enjoy your life and co-create a beautiful life. It's resolving the misunderstandings that get in the way of you actually doing that.
Oh,
And
that's really good.
when you start to free yourself of some of those misunderstandings, it opens up your consciousness to be connected and committed to what you really want to be experiencing. But what most people are doing is they're focused on their humanness. They're identified with their humanness, and their humanness is that story of, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not thin enough, I'm not smart enough. The narrative, the beliefs that we were just talking about, are really just your humanness. And there's not a judgment about that. We all have humanness. That's what we're all doing here. But you can learn how to de-identify with your humanness. Humanness is the truth of who you are. And you can learn to identify with what you want to be identified with. Like, for me, it's my spiritual being, or my authentic self, or my true self. Like, those are the different ways that I say it. I want to be identified with the part of myself that is internally magnificent. And I want to be showing up from my magnificence every single day. And that's my intention. And that's what I do. And if there's anything that comes up that gets in the way of that magnificence, then I work on resolving it, letting it go, forgiving it, bringing compassion to it. There's so many ways one can work with this, that those misunderstandings, they don't rule my life anymore. They don't run the show anymore. My magnificence is running the show now. My spiritual being is running the show. And my duty is just like, hey, is there anything getting in the way of this? And if there is, I'm going to clear it, clean it, free it up, and then get back on board with being, my spiritual being for most of the day. I will always have my humanness. I will always have my ego. I don't have any beef with it. I really don't.
No beef with the ego. That's
no,
good.
I've
always heard your ego is not your amigo, but I like that you've made peace.
I made peace with it. Like, that's just part of the human condition, is that we're going to have our humanness, right? So some days I'm in victim consciousness. Some days I'm maybe more fearful than other days, but I don't identify with it anymore. I don't identify. Arlena, that's the difference.
Yeah, that is really good. So this is what I really wanted to talk to you about, because it feels like a paradox. We went to the She Recovers event in Miami, and Nadia Wells, I may be mixing that up.
Right. I gotcha.
So she was talking about self-acceptance. Like, there's this ideal future self out there, and there's this gap between where we are now and this ideal future self. And she was like, it's never going to happen. Just let it go. Love and accept yourself exactly as you are. And that felt so freeing to me. And I've been really thinking about that idea a lot. And this is what sounds like a paradox to me, because we are going to continue to grow and evolve and change. That's just part of being a biological creature on this planet, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're always changing and evolving. And as we do intentionally focus on this kind of material, our ideas tend to evolve. So I am just aware for my own self that until I love and accept myself exactly as I am, I'm not able to change or like grow towards that person that I want to be. So that in lies what seems to be a paradox. But as I listen to you, it's really not, because I hear you saying things like, what came up for me is like, I'm asking different questions. Like, what else could this mean? Like, if I just notice my thought, like I tend to look in the mirror and go, oh my God, I can't believe my fat pants are tight. It's the whole middle is problematic for me. And then there are some thoughts that come along with that. Right. And I'm not even always really aware of what I'm saying to myself. But it's like, it just feels shitty.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe I let myself get this way. I'm at my pregnancy weight. And then it feels bad. And so what I hear you saying is like, it's a misunderstanding, or it's like something is unresolved. And so maybe what else could this mean is a good question that I should be asking myself. But like, where would you take that sort of, like, I'm starting from the place of, oh no, look at look at this thing I'm carrying around in the front of me. Like, where would you what's a different option? What else could I do?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is just to get curious about it.
Okay.
So like you said, I usually ask the question like, what's this about for me? Because we want to stay out of the judgment. As soon as we go into the judgment, we go into that negative feeling that you're talking about. And so it's really staying neutral, Arlena, and just witnessing what the mind or the ego is saying, which is, oh, these pants don't fit anymore. Like we actually just giggled about that, and that's
how I cover my shame. Yeah.
Well, not that, but even like if you can witness the ego and just be like, you're hysterical, like hilarious. You're being funny right now. Like just seeing it more in a lighthearted way, then again, identifying with it, identifying it as truth. It's not necessarily truth. That like maybe there's a reality that you have gained a little bit of weight, but the judgment on it is the thing that becomes negative for people.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little free therapy for me. So brace yourself. Okay, but I really like where you're going with this. So what is this about for me? So if I'm going to answer that question, I can honestly say, so today is actually marks 6 months that my mom passed away. Mm-hmm. And I feel like over the last 6 months, even longer, if I'm honest, I feel like it's a little bit of a victim mentality to be like, I'm using my mother's death to eat lots of cookies. Like that. And then there's the next voice is like, oh, that's bullshit. You shouldn't be, don't use your mom's death as a reason to be fat. Because the truth of the matter is I was getting a little fluffy before that. But what is this about for me? And I think this, like you said, there's unresolved things, right? It's like, doesn't matter how long you've been sober. There's just always stuff that's unresolved. And like my stuff comes up around needing external validation, which is also tied to mom, right? Seeking mom's approval, so it's, what other questions could I be asking myself, or what leads to a road of self-compassion or thinking, or did you say disidentifying?
Yeah, it could be that. You're doing great. So what you just shared is beautiful, and I appreciate your vulnerability to share it here with everybody. Like that's it. Like you just had some insights about what this is tied to for you. A couple of things that you named there. So then it becomes about like ownership and responsibility here of, now that I'm aware of these things that are coming up for me, because these things are usually coming up to be healed or resolved. That's part of the spiritual psychology thinking.
Mm.
So here's an opportunity for healing. Here's an opportunity for some resolution. So again, not shaming yourself or beating yourself up because this is how you're thinking or feeling. It's more like there's an opportunity here to work with this, which you are quite naturally doing even in this moment.
Yeah.
So now it's like, what would I like to do with these insights that I'm
Ooh,
having?
what are my options?
That's it. Well, your option is to keep it and stay in perhaps in victim consciousness or victimhood around these things. Or another option would be, I could bring some compassion to this. I could bring
Okay.
some self-forgiveness to this. I forgive myself for buying
wow.
into the misunderstanding that I have to avoid or check out from some of the grief that I'm having.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I just
What do you
shared
think about that? Yeah.
well, it's so interesting because I spoke at a meeting the other day and my topic was, what day is today? Is today only Monday? No.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. What day is today? On Sunday, I spoke and my topic was self-forgiveness. And it's so funny because we can't really get to the self-forgiveness until we do some self-examination
That's it.
and sort of, get a lay of the land, like what's really going on. And then what is mine and what is not mine. And it's so interesting because if it were someone else, I'd be like, oh my gosh, your mom died. I'm so sorry. I would offer the compassion. But when I think of myself, it's like, oh, I know better. I've been sober a long time. I have all the information and don't use the victim mentality to perpetuate bad behavior. So maybe, yeah. So I'm recognizing the need for compassion and forgiveness. I know.
Yeah,
That's
I'm hearing
hard.
that too, that there's an opportunity for you to deepen in your self-compassion and
Yeah.
forgiveness. And that's
Yeah.
it. Like for me, the journey was every time a negative thought would come up, I would actually use self-forgiveness on it. And so now my consciousness, I don't have a lot of negative thoughts that come up because I've trained myself and practice, like we talked about, that I'm really good at like utilizing things in the moment, applying things in the moment. So it could be as simple as like stubbing your toe and being like, oh, that was so stupid, or I'm so stupid,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would catch myself right away and I'd be like, I forgive myself for, judging myself or calling myself a name like stupid. I just stubbed my toe. I don't need to call myself a name about that. I can let that go.
So it's really about being intentional
Mm-hmm.
about actually saying the words to yourself.
It's because it's like a healing balm, right? One of the principles in spiritual psychology is that healing happens in the loving. It
Say
does
that
not
again.
happen. Healing happens in the loving. It does not happen in shame, guilt, or judgment.
My favorite thing to say is like, you can't hate yourself well.
Yeah, you did. I
Just
think you
stop.
posted about that on LinkedIn, I saw.
I
So
did.
that's it. But this is what I'm talking about. It's now you like up leveling the embodiment of the things that you share with people.
That's what I
Arlena.
wrote down right in the very beginning. Application and embodiment. See, this is why
That's
you
what
had to
we're
come
talking
back.
about.
This is why you had to come back. Who knew that we were just going to be doing therapy for Arlena?
I love it.
Yeah, no, the healing and compassion and self-forgiveness. Okay, that is huge.
This
And
is the
okay,
practice. This is the practice. It's not just doing it one time or a couple of times. It's every time that the misunderstanding appears.
So
You
what
heal
I
it.
don't want to do is, I guess this is where the glitch in the thinking is that I don't want to use this self-compassion, forgiveness in a way that's going to keep myself stuck. Like, I don't want to stay in the victim mentality. I like to take action. Like, action makes me feel better, but then I sort of cross over into that achievement junkie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, covering my shame with achievement also feels out of balance. But do you know what I'm saying?
I hear you, but I don't think that's what we're doing here. What we're
Okay.
doing is we're applying healing
Okay.
to a misunderstanding, a judgment, something that brings up shame for you. That is the action. That is the thing that
that
you're
is the thing.
doing.
Oh.
And the more you do that, the less judgments, misunderstandings
Okay.
there are. The healing happens in the loving. So the more you bring love, self-forgiveness, acceptance, compassion to yourself, these misunderstandings start to go away. So
See,
you
this
won't
is
have as many of them to have to keep doing that with.
right. Because even though it's like, there's a, like, I'm real time having this dialogue, like, you already know all this. You should, applying it is a little bit harder than just, yeah, there is that difference. It's like self-knowledge avails us nothing is sort of a saying that you hear in 12-step rooms. It's like, you have to actually apply it.
Yeah. And you up
So,
level. This
and
is
you
what
up
I
level.
mean. Like, you don't just stay like this in your recovery. You
Right.
keep evolving in your
Yeah.
recovery. And so it's like, it's not a matter of you not knowing the knowledge, Arlena, or beating yourself up about, I already know all this, I should be doing this. Again, that's the pattern that we want to resolve.
Right.
Is this pattern that you go into when you think I should already be doing this, or I should already know this. That's what we want to be resolving.
So that we started off with talking about commitment to new identity. So that is actually the new identity then,
That's
is the voice of compassion and forgiveness. That is the new identity. Is that right?
it. That's it. Well, that's what the authentic self is. Your spiritual being, your authentic self, your true self is not judgmental. Your true self
Oh,
is loving, accepting, all of
true
those.
self. I was like, because that
Yeah.
bitch is super judgy. What are you
That's your
talking about?
humanness. That's
That's
your
my,
humanness.
it's my humanness.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Yeah, trying to operate from more, not solely, but operate more from that new
That's it.
identity.
Yeah, there's no such thing as just 100% being that authentic self, because we're in the human condition. So we're going to have an ego, we're going to have our humanness. I have found for me, like, the new identity has been, how do I enjoy both of these parts of myself?
Oh.
And like live more from my spiritual being throughout the day, but not negate either part or make either part, the star. It's kind of, and I think that's what's made me particularly good at being spiritual in a sense, but still living a good life, like in physical world reality. Like, I have a good life. My life is very physical. I'm not just like woo woo up in the clouds. You know what I mean? Like,
We used to say sometimes, like, we used to tease my dad a little bit because he was super religious, right? And we used to say, oh, he's so heavenly minded, he's of no earthly good.
There you go.
Super mean because he was of earthly good. Just a fun little teasing you do with your dad.
Right. But you want the combination. I think,
Yeah.
like, what you're saying there is like having, for me, this is again my experience. I want to have both. I don't want to be all spiritual. I don't want to be all just, in the world and of the world. I want, my soul came here to work on doing both.
Yes. I mean, I sometimes so it's like, I like Louis Vuitton, but I don't want it to define me.
Right. Totally. That's it. It's like appreciating that luxury.
Yeah.
And also
I like nice
not
things,
not
but
feeling bad about yourself or making yourself wrong if you can't experience that luxury. Yeah. Having the best of both of them.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because I think maybe my misunderstanding has been, and I think that's why Nadia's lecture about the gap was so profound to me, because I do have a tendency to beat myself up with this achievement thing, even in terms of spiritual growth. Right? It's like, I need to pray. I like this little checklist that I like. It's like every once in a while I have to take a step back and be like, okay, what kind of self-care is really going to nourish me without becoming another thing that I beat myself up about. Right. And so for me, it's like, oh, if I just write for about 15 minutes in the morning, my writing includes, I actually have something called the 5-minute journal. And it's something I can do quickly. It never takes me 5 minutes. I always take way longer. But it's like the things that I'm grateful for, things that I want to experience, like what would make today great, like being intentional about defining success and what makes me happy or makes me feel good about myself. And then And then just like a positive affirmation that I can carry throughout the day. That's sort of like my little 15 minutes of journaling. I do still go to 12-step meetings a lot. I like to stay close to, the information that feels good. It's a place for me to share my feelings and be present and do service and listen to other people, and connecting. Have you ever heard of the app called Marco Polo?
Mm-mm, you
Oh my
haven't.
God, it's hilarious. It's a video chat. And so I can use my phone and chat with a girlfriend. And then when she has time, she sends me a message back, but I can see her and I can hear her voice. And it's just like, so it helps me to connect with busy people. I'm busy. My friends are busy. And so they say that like alcoholism is a disease of isolation, connections, the cure. So those are kind of some of the things that I do. Those are my tools, along with prayer, meditation. Do you practice daily meditation or a form of meditation in your own self-care?
I do. I mean, for me, it's more sitting in the silence.
Ooh,
So
silence. I'm
it's,
not good with silence.
yeah. So I spend a lot of time in nature because we have a really nice
Oh,
backyard,
yeah.
and then of course with the dogs, I'm playing with the ball a lot, and so a lot of time in nature and a lot of time like taking breaks, being in the silence.
Tell me a little
So
more about the silence, because that's something I really struggle with. I can do like guided meditations or
mm,
meditations to music. How do you approach that silence? Does your body need a few minutes to sort of settle down into that silent space? Or are you so practiced at it, your body's like, oh yeah, this is what we're doing now?
well, it's interesting you say that because I have just realized after doing so many of the holistic coach certification program cohorts, because we do a centering at the beginning of each one of those, and
Remind me to talk about that a little bit
okay,
too, because I want to know more about that.
I do a variety of centerings when I take people through that coach
Okay.
certification program. And what I've noticed now is I can sync up real quick. Like I can, we talk a lot about dropping from head to heart in there. So I have this ability now to like let go of what's going on in my head and really connect more with my body, with my heart, with my higher self, with, the universe around me. I'm practiced enough in it now to where I actually yearn to be in the silence. I really do. I want to be in the silence. Like, what? This can happen.
Because that's a
It's
thing
true.
that can happen. Ooh, girl, I'm gonna try this.
To just start with 5 minutes or something.
Okay, tell
But
me about the
it's to me,
centerings though.
yeah. I mean, to me, the silence also is different than meditating. I find that that word for people doesn't always work, and it feels people have a story about meditation.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, just like sit in silence for 5 minutes outside in your backyard. Like that's meditating too, or
Okay.
go for a meditative walk where you're just like letting go of and just listening to the birds, breathing the air. Like those are ways to be in meditation too, without doing a meditation that I think a lot of people have
Yeah.
a hard time with.
I always tell people it doesn't mean what you think it means. Yeah,
Right.
it's not, you're not levitating. You don't have to say om. It's not trying to completely clear your brain of all thought. For me, it's like being in the present moment and then noticing when my brain leaves and starts thinking. A friend of mine told me your brain's job is to think. That's its job. So just notice when it starts working.
Right.
It
Exactly.
goes to work. And just notice, oh, we're not working right now. Come on back. If it goes out 1,000 times, bring it back 1,000 times. It's like fishing. You just bring it
Yeah.
back. You notice, you bring it back, no judgment. And, sometimes the periods between, working and being at peace get longer and longer. And you do experience those silent moments of nothing.
You've got it.
Not very
Yeah.
long, but yeah.
In terms of the centering, I mean, the centering is just centering your energy. So again, like a really easy one is just drop from head to heart. So what we do in the coach certification program is we teach a pre-ritual to your coaching conversations and a post-ritual to your coaching conversations. And so part of the pre-ritual for people is that usually people like something to center their energy mind, body, and spirit, finding some harmony between your mind, body, and spirit, either dropping from head to heart, settling into your body and into your breath before you go into a coaching conversation. So again, you mentioned it being intentional earlier, and that's what it is. It's just being intentional with taking good care of yourself so that you can be available to now facilitate a space where somebody can take care of themselves.
I feel like so many of us in the recovery space are very like people pleasers or codependents. We accustomed to seeking outside ourselves or to servicing other people or I should be more careful how I say things, being of service to other people. Sorry. So that then we can then be okay. My external validation is like, I need to make you okay so that I can be okay. And what I'm hearing you say is find ways of going within and recognizing that I'm actually okay.
That's it. Like
my needs are met, then I can give from a place that doesn't have strings attached.
That's it.
It's not sticky.
It's really important for us, like, because my story is that I wasn't a healthy helper. I was helping from a codependent place. I was using, nonprofit work and the work that I was doing to feel good about myself. And so now when we teach our coaches, it's all about looking at yourself, like you're a demonstration of the work that you're doing. So we're all inside out. That's our focus, is inside out, not outside in.
Right. Yeah. And even if you're not a coach, if you're a mom, a coworker, a friend, a support person, I feel like we all play that role somewhere in our lives. So it's good to know how to come from a healthier place.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tell me about your, the work that you do and the coaching program and all that.
So, well, I started my business about 7 years ago now.
It's been a long time.
I know it has been. So started with doing more alternative recovery coaching for people that were wanting to get sober through alternative pathways, and still do some of that work, which is always fun for me. But things have progressed so much that over the last few years, we started our own coach training program, and we're accredited through the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation. So we're aligned with
Congratulations, by the way. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, with their ethics, their standards. And now we even got this training partnership with She Recovers, which is really exciting. So things just keep evolving and growing. But essentially, for anybody who wants to become a professional life coach, we teach this holistic lens, which is the 4 levels: the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And that's what makes our program quite different than a lot of the other coaching programs, because sometimes you'll find with coaching, like, people are top heavy in one area. Like if we think of like fitness coaching or something like that, where it's very physical level.
Yeah, you get a lot. There's a lot of nutrition, nutrition coaches, or you get the yoga people, which are all great.
Yeah, so you'll get coaching that's maybe very focused on one area. I think what's been so revolutionary in my recovery has been this holistic approach, this holistic recovery, holistic approach to coaching, where we're helping people, like you said, really get dominion over those 4 areas within themselves, so that they can have more trust and safety for themselves when they're working the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical level. Like when you're thinking about a practice, for anybody that's listening, a very simple thing to do is make sure you're doing one activity on each of those levels every day. So that way you're working the spiritual level, you're doing something for your physical level, you're doing something for your mental level, and you're doing something for your emotional level. That can be a really simple practice to have, so that you have a well-rounded approach to how you're taking care of yourself. So that's essentially part of what we teach people in the program.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And I both love and fear the way the recovery landscape is changing. I'm super old school, and that's what worked for me at the time for a variety of reasons. But over the longer I'm sober, the less I know what's right for anybody else. And I like the idea of the holistic approach. That's actually what I use in my coaching too, is a holistic approach, because everybody is different. but everybody has those 4 levels.
Yes.
And so, yeah, so those are like the common denominators that absolutely need to be addressed.
I agree. And I think that
Yeah.
when you address those 4 things for yourself and you start to feel stronger, like I was telling you earlier, I started to feel stronger with myself. Then I was able to look externally and say, okay, now that I'm feeling like I have some dominion over myself, some safety within myself on these 4 levels, now I need to look at my life. What are the areas of my life that feel important to me in my recovery? And that's when, relationships came forward, and career and purpose and health and finances. Like, I started to be able to actually work on those things in an intentional way because I had created this trust and safety in myself around these 4 levels. That's always my core starting point. That's where my identity comes from, is my connection to, again, my true self and operating consistently on these 4 levels. So I trust myself now. I have confidence in myself now. I'm consistent and reliable to myself first and foremost. And then now I can look externally and say, what are the areas that feel most important? For me, relationships was the first one. I had never had a healthy relationship before I met Richard. And so, but it started with me having a healthy relationship with myself. And once I started feeling stronger in that, then it was like, okay, I really yearn to have a healthy relationship with someone. That was kind of my ultimate, honestly, like beyond career and money and all these things. I just wanted to be able to have a healthy relationship with an intimate partner, which I was able to then create. And then off of that stemmed, my work and my purpose work, and it built off of that. But it started with me creating that inner dominion, that inner trust and safety with
I
myself.
just think that is so profound, because a lot of us that have struggled with drug and alcohol issues, we don't trust ourselves because we think that, I think it's an identity misunderstanding, right? That because we've behaved badly under the influence of drugs and alcohol, that's who we are. But
Yes.
it's not. It's not. And what you're saying is that we can learn to trust ourselves and have that internal security.
Yes.
And from that foundation, then we can build from there to have a well-rounded, healthy life. Nobody's going to be perfect,
Nope.
but we can up level all areas of our lives. I always think it's romance, finance, and fitness.
Right. Totally. Yeah, that's good.
Right. Yeah.
But you can see what most people do is they go external first.
Yeah.
They go to a new relationship, to a new location, to a new job. They try to shuffle things around externally when never building that trust and safety within themselves.
It's got to come inside out.
And that's why I like the 4 levels, because it gives you a very simple and practical application of, and it's not even saying this is what you have to do on those 4 levels. You find out what you want to do for yourself mentally. Is it journaling? Emotionally, maybe it's affirmations, to get that positive self-talk, that positive good feeling that maybe you don't naturally have for yourself. Physical, maybe there's something that you want to do on that level. It's different. Some people want to do weightlifting. Some people want to do yoga. Some people want to walk. Some people want to do breath work. Like, there's different things you can do there. And that's what I love about it, is that the practice doesn't stay the same. You keep up leveling the practice in alignment with kind of what your next level is.
Right. You tune into yourself, you tune inwards, and, trust that what the next right thing is.
That's it.
Yeah. Cause I noticed when I was younger, running was a thing. As I get older, not so much.
No.
Yeah, that shit hurts my hips. I don't know. It's too painful. I'm liking yoga these days.
Yeah, that's it.
Little baby weights are fine too.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever. I want to be respectful of your time. So you're not doing a whole lot of one-on-one coaching yourself these days, but you are training people to be holistic coaches, alternative recovery coaching. If somebody wants to get engaged and maybe hire a coach to get some help in applying all this stuff.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation to get
Yeah.
started?
I mean, I do have spots for individual. So
Oh, okay.
I always keep 5 spots for individual.
Okay.
If there's anybody that ever wants to do more intentional one-on-one work, that's available. And
Okay.
then the coach certification is awesome because it gives people personal growth on top of the professional
Yeah.
growth. So for a lot of people, they up level and transform by going through the coach certification program. And
There's
what's
this
great about
idea
it
that
is
that we teach what we need to learn,
right.
right? And Stephen Covey was, I think, famous saying, if you really want to learn something, you have to teach it,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it serves that dual purpose, because I felt, especially when people first get sober and they resolve the crisis, they're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
everybody needs to know this. That's a very natural, intuitive urge that people get. So I love that you have this coaching certification that benefits the coach, as well as serves that, satisfies that need to help others.
Yeah, to keep learning, to keep working on yourself. Like these are all elements of it. And you don't have to just want to be a recovery coach. Like we have a lot of, clinicians and educators that come through that they want to become a holistic coach. So we do get a lot of recovery people too, but it's not just recovery
Well, here's the thing. You
people.
can, when you solve the crisis of the addiction, then what? I mean, that's just the very beginning.
Hmm.
Solving the crisis is the drugs and alcohol. It seems it's not an easy nut to crack, but it's crackable. And then once you get sober, the question is, then what? And then we go deeper, right? It's get sober, stay sober, go deeper. And so, yes, it's important to work with somebody who knows how to solve the initial crisis problem, but then we have to keep going.
Yeah.
We have to keep going.
We have a paradigm as part of our program that talks about moving through coping, healing to thriving. Like that's part
Coping,
of what
healing.
right, that's part of what the holistic coaching is all about.
Yeah.
It's moving through coping, healing to thriving. And sometimes I find some of our recovery friends, they really stay in the coping situation when they need to move through healing to get to the thriving.
Right.
So that's partially what we talk about as well.
Yeah.
And then as far as we also have a lot of holistic coaches that graduate from the program. So I recently wrote a blog on our website, which is Holistic Coach Training Institute. There's 7 holistic coaches that we put forward there. So if somebody is looking for someone to work with, there's 7 people there that you could check out that have different niches, backgrounds, and you could see if someone there resonates with you as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love talking to you always. It was so nice to meet you in person
Me
and
too.
in Miami. That was so fun. Of course, I didn't get enough time, but I'm greedy that way.
Yeah.
There's
I
never enough time. But this was so hugely helpful, and I can't wait to
Good.
publish this again. Thank you for the
I really
free
appreciate
therapy.
No, and I love this topic of de-identifying with your humanness, your ego, or seeing yourself as just simply, someone in recovery or someone who struggles or someone who has a problem. And I encourage you to shift your perspective beyond that and start to see yourself as magnificent, brilliant, as a spiritual being having a human experience. What could life be like if you lived from that perspective? That's what
beautiful.
I want to leave people with. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Bev. It's great to
Thank
see
you.
you.
You too.